to fulfill my obligation to the potential, to fill my purpose, to live out, walk out my mission, and to manifest my vision. It was going to take 100% of what I had at that time to build that business, so I couldn't ride two horses.
Hello and welcome to the Remarkable CEO Podcast, a show dedicated to chiropractors who want to transform their job into a business so that they can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. With your hosts, Dr. Pete Camiolo and Dr. Stephen Franson.
Welcome back to another episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. I'm Dr. Pete Camiolo.
And I'm Dr. Stephen Franson.
And if you're watching on YouTube, yes, you are seeing both of us in blazers today. Dr. Stephen, nice blazer.
You looking sharp, Dr. Pete. Thanks, man. We both just popped into the studio in blazers like, hey, what are you doing?
Hey, it's Thursday. So normally it's Friday, but today it's Thursday. So that's great. And I felt like it was a blazer day, you know, and apparently so did you. So
it was inspiration.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's great. I know I'm running out of here after this. I've got a date night with my beautiful wife, and we're going to go support a friend of ours who's got a party tonight, launching her next stage of her career, and take advantage to take Dr. Camilla out for a nice dinner tonight. So I figured I'd throw on a blazer and I'd keep it on for the podcast. So you're looking sharp, buddy.
I think that's a great idea. Likewise. Speaking of date nights, I had a date night last night. So, hey, if you have a spouse, significant other, remember, keep dating your wife, keep dating your spouse, right?
That's exactly right.
Always reminded by that. So anyway, I had a great date night last night. And for all of you coming to Nashville, that's actually where I'm at. There's a lot of great spaces here and places to go out. So I hope that you have registered for the upcoming immersion. I don't know when this episode exactly is going to fall, but either way,
hopefully you didn't miss it.
If you listen to this afterwards, I'm sorry you missed out if you weren't here. But we're about to have a killer event, Dr. Stephen. I'll tell you, even in just this week, people are getting registered. We're gonna. It will be our biggest event we've ever had. I'm super pumped about that, and I'm inspired because we literally just came from a chiropractic event last weekend. We were out at Sherman. And now we're prepping for an event come up in a couple of weeks from now in Remarkable. So it's just awesome. It was great to see you last weekend. I'm looking forward to seeing you in a few weeks in Nashville. And we're gonna talk through some things today, some things that were inspired actually from our visit to Sherman and Lyceum last weekend.
Yeah, that was awesome, man. And I am stoked to be in your hometown, man. I haven't seen your new house yet, so I'm planning on crashing that party. So don't invite a Franson. We'll show up, right? So I'm psyched to see the new pad and see all the kiddos and see Mary. So that's going to be awesome. I love Nashville. And the Country Music Awards are there at the same time. And I know we're bringing about 600 people into that hotel for the Remarkable Practice Conversion Retention Immersion. So that town's going to be on rails, man. There's going to be a lot going on, lots of live music, lots of fun, lots of energy. And I know, we always bring so much energy. So I'm psyched for that.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. So Dr. Stephen, we had a chance to go last week. It was actually my first time. I know it's not yours, but my first time to Sherman Chiropractic College and Lyceum last weekend. And we were pumped because we're actually launching our Remarkable Practice Student Club on campus there. We have some incredible student leaders that have already are just championing that and movement, and we are fired up to be just having an opportunity to support, serve, have a positive influence on the next generation of chiropractors that are right now being groomed for service, and they're about to get released into the marketplace. And we have identified that what a better time to, we talk about the oak tree example, never been a better time to, plant that tree 50 years ago would be today. So this is our opportunity to say, hey, get ahead of it, get ahead of your career. Your career started already because you're in school. So let's be mindful of that. So Dr. Stephen, we had an awesome time there, being able to connect with some of the students. And I had a great time. I got some CEs. We did a lot. We accomplished a lot, I think, during that weekend.
That's right.
But one thing in particular was we had an opportunity to have a fireside chat. We were able to put on a small event for the students there. And that was just a really special time. I had a great time. So I know Sam was there. We saw bunch of our TRP clients have children that are in Sherman. They were there. It was a lot of fun.
It was awesome. We call that a third bird weekend, right? So everybody knows the expression, get two birds with one stone. Well, we're entrepreneurs, we're chiropractors. So two birds are not enough. You got to find that third bird. So it was totally, you got your continuing ed credits. That was your third bird. For us, it was launching the Remarkable Practice Club on campus. Big shout out to Air and Tyler, who are just future chiropractors who just took such good care of us. Oh my gosh. They are awesome. If you guys are listening, which I think you are now, man, you guys were wonderful. I just so appreciate you. And got to meet Dr. Jack Borla and really get to spend some time with him. He's just awesome. He's just doing great work there. What a superhero that guy is. And to be at Lyceum and see what the great work that Sherman's doing, man, it's just so important that we support vitalistic chiropractic colleges. And Sherman is certainly that. So it was just awesome to be there on campus. We've been big Sherman supporters for years as the Remarkable Practice. I love getting back to Sherman for Lyceum. Stoked to have a club launched on campus now, which is really awesome. And of course, Sam. So my son, Sam, we were actually celebrating his birthday, turned 20 years old. I can't believe my son is 20. And he threatens to become a chiropractor. So he's been doing the tour, checking out the schools, the vitalistic chiropractic colleges. So it was Sherman's turn to check it out. He loved the campus, loved the people, and they really just made him feel super welcome and like a VIP. So, man, it was just a great weekend, and it just crescendoed. And I'd say the fireside chat that we had with the new TRP club with all the students at the house was a big highlight for sure.
Yeah, it was, what was cool for me was just going back into like when we were students, when I was in this student stage in my career as a chiropractor, and how important it was for me when I went to a bit of a more of, you might call it a less vitalistic school than the ones that Sam's checking out. I'll put it that way. And, for me, the highlight was when I was in school was when we had guest speakers come on campus. And I loved going to those. And, something just drew me in. I just knew I needed to be there, so I would make it work and get there. And, it was just awesome to be able to have an opportunity to speak into the students, just because I know how valuable that was for me as a student. And, whether they know you or not, that doesn't really make a difference, to be honest. But, we were able to, I think, just deposit some really important seeds into the students, into their heart and mind, and really, hopefully help them become even more aware of, number one, how important it is to be a chiropractor. We say often on this podcast, there's never been a more important time to be a chiropractor, and what the world needs right now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs right now is more successful chiropractors. So, that is ultimately where you're just simply acting and behaving in alignment with our mission and vision and our values and our purpose. It's all there. So for us to be there was 100% aligned and congruent activity. And so, for me, a highlight was, when we were doing the fireside chat, obviously we had a chance to just do a little, just share our heart a little bit, but we opened it up for questions. I thought that was a really good framework that we did. And we set it up where, we said, hey, what questions do you have? And we just want to be here. We're open books. You have full access to us. Like, we coach for our work. So like all day long, we're in this space, like helping chiropractors become more successful, and we want to help you, So I thought that was a really great framework that we had set up for that time. And I think it went really well.
Yeah, it was cool because, with students, you never know what they have for questions, right? So it's like, you don't know what they know and they don't know what they don't know, right? So what they need to know, is not necessarily what they're going to ask you about. So we want to make sure that we were relevant and to address some of the questions and probably redirect some of the questions. Like, yeah, that's a good question. Let me give you a better question. Here's what you should be asking me on that. Right. So that was kind of fun to do that. But, there was one, you and I talked about it afterwards. There was one that, there was one question or comment that was made. It was a question that really stuck out that, I think it's worth having a conversation about it here, because it's something that you hear more and more. And I know that it's just totally like a social media dynamic that you're seeing. It's a phenomenon that comes from, the Instagram culture, TikTok and all the influencers out there. And I think people have more exposure to people who are doing really big and exciting things. And that, usually they've got really big lives and big stories to tell. And it's not uncommon that they have a constellation of businesses, right? So they have multiple streams of revenue, right? Multiple streams of income, and they love to tell that story. Personally, that's my story, right? So I do have multiple businesses, multiple streams of revenue, and we're running a complex portfolio of businesses at this point, right? So the reality is that I've been after this for 30 years, right? So, and this student, posed a question, is like, hey, yeah, so I know that it's a good idea to have like a side gig going on, and have side businesses going on with your practice. And kind of like what you guys are doing here as a side gig, and you and I both, it just kind of struck us as like, oh my gosh, man, there's such confusion in this generation right now. The students coming out of school is like, what does it take to actually become successful? The demands on your focus for actually producing something worthwhile, right? So, and how your practice, let's say that's your one thing, right? Like if you're in chiropractic school right now, I hope that your one thing is I'm going to be opening up a practice or going to work inside of a practice and being a world-class chiropractor. But you got one thing, right? So you're going to build a practice, right? So regardless of whether you're an owner or a practitioner, you're going to be building a practice, and it's going to demand everything you got, right, to build that. So Dr. Pete, I think that that's an important, conversation for us to have, to maybe clear up some of that confusion or misinformation. People get the impression that, oh yeah, I just have, 3 or 4 or 5 businesses that I just sort of started up simultaneously, and, I can juggle these businesses and what have you. And it's just like, but at the end of the day, the truth is that when it came to, I'll speak to my own experience, and then I'd love to hear yours, our own, history, our historical successes, whatever success we've enjoyed, the common thread is that it demanded everything that we had to focus on one thing, right? So like for the practice, right? So when we started our practice and built a massive practice, a successful practice, I can tell you right now, it took everything I got. Like literally, 100.0% of what I had went into that practice to build it to what it became, right? So literally 100%. And how do I say that? Is because my wife was standing right next to me. So I didn't feel like I was cheating on my wife with my business, right? I wasn't having an affair with my practice, leaving my family out of it. We didn't have kids yet, and my wife was right there next to me, right? So I know I can speak honestly and say it took 100% of the professional and business brain cells that I had to make that practice what it was, right? So, and I can tell you that it was that level of commitment that then helped me make the decision to sell that business once we started the coaching business. Like I made that transition after 25 years in practice to be able to say, all right, so my next iteration is going to become being a coach and having a coaching business. And that was my next calling, right? So I feel blessed in that. I feel like 2 times in my life, I said, I'm doing exactly what God designed me to do. I've felt that way in the adjustatorium every minute. And I feel that way today as a coach, coaching chiropractors, right? So I just knew once that chiropractic business started to take off, when the Remarkable practice took off, I had to sell the chiropractic practice because, number one, the chiropractic practice required a full-time present leader, and so did the Remarkable practice to fulfill my obligation to the potential, to fill my purpose, to walk out my mission, and to manifest my vision. It was going to take 100% of what I had at that time to build that business. So I couldn't ride 2 horses, sell the practice, build the Remarkable practice. And I'll put a period on this by saying it was not until I established the durability inside of the Remarkable practice where I started to act actually as the CEO, built out a complete, operationalized and professionalized the business with a complete team, have 15 coaches that allow me now. This business is profitable and throws off enough profit that I can invest in the other businesses where I'm an equity partner, I'm an advisor, I'm on the board, but it's requiring very little of my time. I'm not operating these other businesses. I'm an advisor working above the business, not an operator working in the business, where I'm 100% working in the Remarkable practice. Although I own the business, I still have a job, and that job calls for me for 60, 70 hours a week. So don't be misinformed or confused. It takes everything you got to be able to fulfill your potential and create a successful business.
So one of the things that I do right now is I coach Little League baseball, and I love it. and I'm having a lot of fun because I get to shape these little minds and these little skills of these little people that one of them are, well, my boys are amongst the group, you know, so it's a little more personal, but I love it anyway. Anyway, I pitch, and, you know, when you're on the mound, every parent's eyeballs is staring at you, because the parent, all they care about is their kid's success, and the kid's success at the plate depends on the quality of the pitch. And so if you're a pitcher, instead of trying to strike people out, you want them to hit it and hit it hard, you know? And so when I'm up there on the mound, you know what I'm looking at? Their eyes. Because what I recognize is that when I have a kid at the plate and their eyes aren't on the ball, okay, and they're not watching my cadence of when my arm goes back and my body weight comes forward, and that ball, like if they don't have their eyes on the ball, they miss it. And if they miss it enough times, they're out. And any kid that strikes out, it's not fun, okay? So I say that because what we teach is you have to focus on the ball. And focus is the key to having success. And when you think about business and focus, we talk about the difference between being a busy and a productive person is focus. You know, and I'm going to come at this from part of my story, which was when I was exiting my practice to fully engage, go fully focused in the next thing, which was coaching, that would enable me to be successful, not only as a coach, but as a chiropractor, was actually my commitment to not taking my eye off of the ball, which was my clinical practice, until that ball was struck by the next person. Like I had to watch it. I watched their eyes. I watched these kids' eyes when I'm pitching. I watched their eyes right down to the ball. Because then I'll tell them, hey, whatever their name is, keep your eye on the ball. If their eyes on the ball, I say nothing because their eyes are on the ball. They might have just fouled it off, whatever. So I just stay the course. And I look at where their bat was and I try to hit they were swinging above it. I'm going to throw the ball just a little bit higher than I did. That's my issue now. Now it's my issue. Like, you got
go ahead, take a swing, Johnny. Okay, there it is. Right into that bad path.
Exactly. You know, so, you know, it's one of those scenarios where, you know, you have to focus and you have to choose where you're focusing. You can't focus on two things. You can't, like, if you're looking at, like, one of the boys, he looks at me and I'm like, no. Like, don't look at me, look at the ball, you know, because if you look at me, you're close to hitting the ball, but you're not really going to hit the ball because you're not quite on target. And so there's things that when you're in business, you know, and so we were sharing this with the students, obviously, you know, really what you were talking about was how important it is to focus. And focus is the difference between having a successful business and any other word to describe mediocrity or going through the motions or distraction or not being fully fulfilled, not fully realizing your purpose or, expressing the full expression of your potential. Like anything below that is when you're not focused. And so, you know, this was an opportunity for us to say, that's what you need to be doing. You need to be focused.
Yes.
And even if you're an entrepreneur, because we know there's three, you have an entrepreneur hardwiring, there's a business builder hardwiring, and there's a caregiver hardwiring. But whatever your hardwiring as a doctor, you need to stay focused in that. You have to know yourself to lead yourself. So you have to understand that even if you're an entrepreneur, you have to focus. And that was my big takeaway, you know, from the time is, and I gave a couple examples of ways that you build your fitness level as a clinician and how you do it. There's a lot of ways, but there's a couple that are for sure. But focus is the biggest thing. If you're off focus, and you have already dropped, you've already missed. You've already missed the pitch.
Literally the opposite of focus is distraction. Mm-hmm. And I would suggest that this is binary. It is on switch, off switch. You are either focused or you're not, right? Mm-hmm. So you're either focused or you're distracted, Those are your two choices, right? So, and the reality is that, and nobody likes to hear this, but there's going to be a season when you are going to have to be maniacal, right? So, and here, I don't want to project on anybody like what it takes or what success looks like, but I will tell you that if you want to be optimized for whatever your idea or definition of success is, literally whatever it is, it's going to require everything you've got, right? It's going to take everything you've got to optimize and realize what your definition of success is. Okay. So nobody gets an asterisk on this one. Okay. So it's like, you got to get clear on what does success look like. Let's assume that you're servant-hearted, mission-driven, and you've got a vision for excellence, right? So can we make those assumptions? It's like, it's going to take everything you got, right? So anything less than that is going to be a distraction. You're going to be distracted and produce less than that, right? It's going to take all the focus you can muster, right? So fight this, fight the temptation to be distracted by the side hustle, the side gig, and all of those other elements. There's a season that you're going to spend. Dr. Pete, in my experience, it's somewhere between 5 and, dare I say, maybe 15 years where you are so focused and optimizing your business so that even when you take your eye off it, it keeps running, going, and growing without you. That's called durability. That's when you've established a remarkable business. It has leveraged operations, right? So you can actually take your eye off of the ball because you have hired somebody else to hit the ball. You know, you can actually step away from the plate because you've got a designated hitter. You're using your money to buy somebody else's time, energy, focus, and talent to free up your time, energy, focus, and talent to go make money somewhere else, okay? Or go do something else that's worth you not making the money, right? So the world is your oyster, my friends. You're going to have an opportunity here to do exactly what you want to do, okay? But you have got to have the discipline and the patience to recognize that this is a two-step process. Step 1, build a kick-ass practice. Step 2, do whatever the heck you want to do. The challenge is, Dr. Pete, is most people want to skip step 1 and run right to step 2.
Please stick around for more business insights from this week's bonus interview with our remarkable success partner, dedicated to helping you more successfully help more people. Enjoy. All right, remarkable CEOs, Dr. Pete here in the studio with a friend of mine, a colleague of all of ours, a CEO, a chiropractor, and looking forward to a conversation about the brain and brain-based health solutions today. We have Dr. Clint Steele here in the studio. Doc, looking good. I made a comment at the beginning. I got to point it out. Love the shirt. You know, we are on a podcast, so somebody might only be listening to us, but I get to see you. And if you're watching this on YouTube or Instagram, you get to see this amazing shirt. So he wins as far as outfit for the day.
All right. Well, I got something, man. I want to see the trophy for that. Thank you, though. Thank you.
You're well. Hey, thank you for taking the time to be here, investing in these amazing listeners to this podcast. So Dr. Clint is a remarkable practice success partner. And if you've been listening to any of our episodes in the past, you know that if you're a partner, that means you all share our values. We align with the vision and mission and what we're trying to accomplish to help chiropractors help more people, make a bigger impact in this world, and help make a bigger income as business leaders. And we want to be able to make a bigger impact and a bigger income. And we know we can do that by partnering with the right people. And Dr. Clint and his business, looking forward to unpacking that and brain-based health solutions and how you're doing that right now. So before we get into some of the questions I have, Dr. Clint, I just want you to introduce yourself to our CEOs, a little about you, help them to know you a little bit, maybe a little of your story.
Well, I appreciate that. And thanks so much. And I love your docs, by the way. Amazing docs. I'm Dr. Clint Steele. I've been in practice since 1993, graduated from Logan, set out to conquer the world through chiropractic, right? And unfortunately, I was met with a community that said, dude, just take care of my neck pain, just take care of my back pain. And so 17 years go by. I couldn't figure out how to get my community, my patients to get it, that there was so much more than just pain relief. And so after 17 years, I quit. I said, I'm done. I had 7,000 patient files, and I still needed more new patients to pay the bills, right? Not only a poor business model, but a poor healthcare model as well. My PVA was 12. And so anyway, I walked away, set out to conquer the world through other means. I set a goal of performing 1 million acts of kindness in 1 year. We hit 2.8 million acts of kindness in 1 year. It was amazing, but it didn't make any money. And I didn't want to get back into chiropractic, so I had to go back to work. I started selling Kirby vacuum cleaners door to door, as you know the story. It was embarrassing. About 3 months of that, I got a letter from my grandmother saying, "Hey, I'm ashamed of you, and you should be ashamed of yourself for not living to your potential." And so I said, she's right. I decided at that point that I was going to open back up, focusing 100% on the brain and nervous system, which is what I feel chiropractic is all about, right? And so I had $1,000 to my name, 750 square foot office space. I went from 0 to 500 patient visits a week in 6 months. And today I have a PVA of well over 250. I see people come in for things like dementia and anxiety and depression and Crohn's disease and kidney disease, instead of just the typical neck and low back pain. So that's what I do, is I help docs now move from a pain model of chiropractic to a brain model of chiropractic. Well, long answer.
Well, I mean, it's a long answer, but it's a really important answer. So first of all, I didn't know all the details of that story. And obviously you could go layers and layers of depth into that story, but just knowing like what you've journeyed through and hitting the bottom and climbing back out of it, but coming out as a resurrected man, like literally, I always think in terms of life, death, resurrection, like there's this, and you had a death, like you something in you died like early in practice, as you said, when you got to your community and they rejected the message and they demanded, neck pain. And, here you are 17 years later. And then you go through this journey, this searching. And I think all the CEOs that are listening have reached some level of, I got to the end of myself and I realized I can't keep functioning as an owner operator anymore. Right. And there's this death of the owner operator identity, and this needs to be this birth and resurrection of the CEO identity. And that's what many of our listeners are journeying through or have journeyed through. And there's iterations of that along the way. And you've had that experience, which is incredible. And now not only have you benefited from your recovery, let's say, and you've resurrected and now making a huge impact, but now you've said, this is too good to be kept to myself. I got to help others. So talk a little bit about, so we know a little bit about what you're doing in your office, helping a lot of folks, but what about brain-based health solutions? So obviously this is something that's important to you. You're not just a practicing practitioner. Now you're actually helping other practitioners. So talk to us about that business and what you guys are up to.
Yeah, a couple of years into this, we had so many docs reaching out saying, "Hey, I knew you in your old practice. I know you in your new practice now. What's the difference? What did you do?" Right? And so that's when my wife and I, we started a company called True Chiro. We've since changed the name to Brain-Based Health Solutions. But basically, the whole idea of, if I were to ask your docs, what system ultimately is chiropractic about? And you and I have this conversation. The answer obviously is the brain and nervous system. But the problem is, if we go out into our communities and we ask 100 people what chiropractic is, 99 of them are going to say neck and low back pain, right? And unfortunately, here's the problem. And this is a major problem, is people are dying right now in your communities because they think all that you do is neck and low back pain. And to me, that's a travesty. And so that's what this business is all about, is in helping docs not only grow their business. I know you said this can be, a financial and a business standpoint aspect, but guys, there are people dying in your communities right now. They're driving by your office on the way to the pharmacy or to the medical doctor or to the hospital, literally dying a slow, painful death because they think that all you do is neck and low back pain. We've got to change that. And that's what we do.
Well, I mean, you can keep going, friend. I mean, you can let it rip if you want to on this podcast, because I'm in full agreement. And if you want to know what's the best business strategy, it's you have to be the messenger with a message that's going to compel the marketplace to mobilize. And that's exactly what you're talking about. You're saying, hey, we got to wake up. We got to see what's going on out there, and that's what you're speaking into. So I actually want you to kind of go a little bit further with that. So, you probably, your message might meet a practice that's just maybe floundering, or maybe is mediocre in the terms of like what they feel their full potential is. And you come in there and you can help revive that practice and get it back on track. Talk a little bit about that. Like, what does it look like if I'm a practitioner and I'm like, wait a second, what do you do? I have a practice, but how would I do what you do? Or do you bolt that on to what I do? Like, what does that generally look like? Give us a little bit of the business model, how you approach that.
Yeah, one of the things that we talk about, I don't know if you know Dr. Michael Longian, we talk about this a lot, is so many docs are so close. I mean, just so close, right? We just have to tweak a few things. And part of that tweaking is changing I talk to so many docs that are so focused on, yeah, I know I'm a brain and nervous system doctor and my patients get it and all this, but yeah, You come back there, you look at their website, or you look at their intake form, or you look at stuff coming out of their mouth, their care plans, and they're still directed around taking care of the symptoms, specifically neck and low back pain. And so it starts with the doc. It starts with the research behind, what the chiropractic adjustment does. We got to get out of this mindset of, hey, chiropractic adjustment is just about restoring joint movement in, a specific segment in the spine. Guys, it's so much bigger than that. It's about changing brain function. And if you ask the question, this is a question I tell docs they need to ask their patients before they move into even a day one, is what coordinates every function in your entire body? Everybody knows the answer is the brain, right?
Yes.
Even if they say heart once in a while, there's a workaround there, and they'll come to the conclusion that, okay, my brain coordinates every function in my body. And so if I have a high blood pressure, I have a digestive disorder, do I really have high blood pressure, or do I have a digestive disorder, or do I have a brain that is not functioning, not communicating properly? And so when we talk to docs, we change this whole perception about, hey, I'm doing more than just moving a segment. Guys, nothing wrong with that. Absolutely. It's 100%. It's absolutely great. Let's do it. But understand that what you're doing is changing at a higher level. Now, I get the whole innate thing right now. Like, we have a hard time measuring that. But if we can measure the brain and show that the brain is actually improving, it's moving from a survival mode to a healing mode, right? From sympathetic escape to parasympathetic engagement. Now we see that the brain now is changing neurotransmitters that are released, hormones that are released, is changing the muscle, like all of it, right? And so that's what we do, is we start with, number one, where's the doc coming from? What's going on in their office? What's going on in their walls? Like right now, I've got this poster behind me. It says 3 T's, right? Thoughts, trauma, toxins. That's what I talk to with patients that come into my offices. I talk about stress, how it's impacting their brain and how that's impacting their health, instead of, and again, no offense to anyone that does this, because it led us to where we are now. But if patients are walking in, you're talking about the brain and nervous system, but they're seeing pictures of the spine and spinal degeneration, or a woman, holding her neck, in a poster saying, where's your pain, those types of things. Like, these are little things that are impacting the perception of the patient as to what it is that we do.
Yes.
That's the stuff we've got to change, right? We could get into the whole day one. We could get into the assessment, right? Yeah. I ask docs, what do you do for assessments? And most of them are at a point where they're doing, well, I do range of motion, I do motion palpation, I do some orthopedic tests, but they don't really measure the brain and nervous system, right? They don't measure the brain in live time, what's going on during stress, and then can they recover after that stress is gone?
So with that, can you talk a little bit about practically, like, so you use the word measure a few times, talk about that. Like, what does that look like for us to measure the function?
Well, the term is called allostasis, right? Most docs know homeostasis, but allostasis actually takes homeostasis to a whole new level. It was actually not invented until late 1980s. And it's the ability for the brain to maintain homeostasis during stress, but then also during recovery. Because homeostasis, when the fire alarm is going off, hopefully is very different than homeostasis when you're at home getting ready to take a nap. I think everyone would you agree with that, Doc, right? Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. The question is, can they do it? Right. And so a lot of times we measure in, what we call relaxed state environment in our offices. And that's fine with, x-rays and rolling thermal, like, it gives us a relaxed state measurement, and that's all fine. But guys, ultimately what we want to do is we want to measure in live time what happens to their heart rate during stress, and then what happens after that stress is gone. Does it downregulate? What happens to their respiration rate during stress? Does it downregulate after that stress is gone? Like, in live time, we're measuring allostatic load, the ability to adapt and then recover. Because at the foundation, again, this doesn't come from me, this is National Institute of Health, numerous other experts all across the world, the over 90% of all disease is due to stress, but more specifically, the inability to adapt to stress and then recover once that stress is gone. And so that's the measurement I'm talking about, is can their brain adapt to the stress, and then once the stress is gone, can they downregulate? And that's where we find most of the problems.
It's huge. I mean, clinically speaking, I mean, you're just nailing it. And I think everyone on the other end of this, interview is listening, nodding their head like, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's 100% true. And nobody's going to argue with that. So what does that look like practically, how you're currently helping docs be more effective in, you used allostasis, like, in showing that to patients? And, we talk about, what people buy is outcomes, right? They want to see their life change, right? That's what patients want. So how are you helping docs produce those kind of outcomes specifically?
Well, there's a number of steps, but I think the main step is we have instrumentation that actually measures brain function. So we actually hook up an EEG, we hook up a lead to the brain, right? And then at the same time, we're measuring heart rate and heart rate variability and respiration rate and skin conductance and hand temperature and all these important measures that most docs say, you know what, whatever, like, why do I need no hand temperature? But guys, understand that when a person's under stress, their hands should get cold, like immediately, right? Because that's the blood flowing away from the hands to the vital organs and the big muscles. And then when they relax, when that stress is gone, their hands should warm up, right? And so all that blood supply should come back to the brain. And so what our instrumentation does is we measure all these things in live time during 4 different stressors and then 4 different recovery periods. And taking this back to business, you know, I always talk about the value. How does the patient perceive you? How do they perceive their value? And when you're in pain, when they're in pain, absolutely, the value of what you do is great. But as soon as they're out of pain, what happens to the value of what you do if they only perceive you as a back and neck pain doctor, right?
Right.
Goes way down. And so as soon as we put that lead on someone's head, all of a sudden it changes their perception about what you do, from being a spine doctor, from being a back doctor, from being a pain doctor to being a brain doctor, which is ultimately, in my opinion, and a lot of other chiropractors agree with me, this is where we started 100 years ago with Didi and, you know, and back in the day, like this is where it all started. And somehow we got off the rails and we started moving down this path of being pain. You know, we can get, that's a whole different, you know, podcast, but ultimately that's what we need to get back to is people understanding that their health problem is related at a foundational level to poor brain function, because the brain coordinates every function in the body. And then secondly, seeing the chiropractic profession, or at least your office, as someone who can fix that. I'm not saying we can fix cancer and we can fix Alzheimer's, we can fix all this stuff. What I'm saying is that we can fix brain function to the point where it's so good, it's so improved that we see things like dementia reverse, we see things like anxiety reverse and depression reverse. And then what happens is the referrals start coming in. So many docs ask me this, oh, I get it, my patients get it, right? And so my comeback is, fine, if they get it, then who are they referring? Because if they're still referring people for pain, do they really get it? Because if they got it, they would refer it. And that's what happens. You know, when we start using this technology in doc's office, within probably 3 to 4 months, 5 months, all of a sudden they'll start seeing referrals for people coming in for stuff other than neck and low back pain, right?
Good. So let's just practically talk. You know, a doc, you know, is using your instrumentation, following the protocols and program. What kind of, you know, results are we seeing practically in the practice? You talked about referrals as an example. I think it's a great segue. What kind of results, you said about 3 to 4 months in, you start to see these changes? What kind of things are you seeing as far as like ROI on people making these types of investments?
Yeah, we're seeing on average a 300% increase in retention. Now, this is not all for all docs. Now, your docs probably have a higher retention than most, but if a doc comes in, they've got a PVA of 15, 20, 25. We're going to see easily, we're going to see that double and triple in the next probably 6 to 9 months. Okay. Referrals are going to go up because, again, if a patient comes in, let's say, you know, mom, Mrs. Jones comes in, she has 3 little kids at home and she thinks that all you're about is neck and low back pain. Well, her kids more likely don't have neck and low back pain, but they probably have anxiety, or they probably have ADD, or they probably have some kind of learning issue, right? And so if they see you as a brain specialist instead of a back specialist, now all of a sudden those referrals go up. And so we see a 200% increase in referrals. We see case averages, acceptance rates go up by about 60%. Again, your docs are maybe a little bit different than the average. Well, I know they're different than the average chiropractors out there. So that goes up. Case averages, we've had docs easily double their income in 6 to 12 months. So case averages usually double in 6 to 9 months, 6 to 12 months. But most importantly, and this is the big thing, right, is we see people come in for stuff other than neck and low back pain, which is ultimately what this is all about, right? And so we tell docs, listen, if you want to make more of an impact, you know, why'd you get into chiropractic? To help people with neck and low back pain? Usually the answer comes back no, right? And so why is it that 90 to 95% of your practice is still neck and low back pain? And so if you want to make more of an impact, you want to see amazing things happen, these miracles that, you know, everyone talks about, then that's what we do.
You brought up Didi a bunch of times. you just thrown his name out there, which is so interesting because that's obviously a look back in many ways, right? To the genesis, the original, the beginning of our great profession. In the last minute or two that we have, Doc, today, as you look ahead and you look at the landscape of chiropractic where we are now, but where we're going in the next 3 to 5 to 10 years, as you look ahead and assess our profession, how will what you're doing now help doctors be more prepared to be successful in the future? I'd love to just maybe 1 minute of perspective from you.
Move to the brain, guys. You got to move to the brain. We already see it happening around us. You can go and research any disease out there and stress and how it impacts the brain, and you're going to see a connection. And so the next step in what we're doing, and by the way, Didi was so far ahead of his time, it's not even funny. I mean, even BJ was measuring the brain back in the 40s, right? And so, guys, we've got to get away from the spine model and move to the brain model, right? Ultimately, though, where this is all headed, guys, and if you can look into the future, you're gonna be able to see this is it's moving more and more towards energy, right? Towards frequency, and that's where this is all headed. And we have some chiropractors now, some technique masters that are starting to come out, teach more about energy and frequency and stuff like that. But ultimately, the next step, guys, is to move from a spine model to move to a brain model. And I'm not saying get rid of the chiropractic adjustment. We got to continue to, obviously, and we're using the spine to do that. But think about this from a bigger picture, from a broader aspect of, okay, this is not just about this segment. This is about the brain and then how the brain coordinates every function in the entire body.
Love it. Last question. In regards to how docs get in contact with you, the best way for a listener to learn more, get in contact with you, or take a next step with you, Doc Clint.
Well, we're at all the functions, man. So come by our table. But in addition, if you guys want, you can go to brainbasedhs.com, brainbasedhs.com. We've got a ton of stuff on there. You've got a download. If you guys want to download a 40-minute podcast, you can listen to all the science, all the research behind this. I've got a great series on how we connect the dots between stress, disease, the brain, and the chiropractic adjustment. And we've got it all proven. We've got all the research. We share a little bit more in depth about the neuroinfinity, the instrumentation that I'm talking about, and how docs can use that, and the amazing changes that we see in docs' practices.
Well, you've been listening to Dr. Clint Steele from Brain-Based Health Solutions here on the Remarkable CEO podcast. Dr. Clint, thanks for taking the time to meet with me. Thank you for sharing your heart, your passion, and also your vision. And thank you for the work that you're doing to help advance our chiropractic profession forward, which is why we're here and working together, and why our doctors are in contact with you, and you're part of their life now. So guys, you know where to go. It's brainbasedhs.com to learn more. If you're going to be at the immersions, you'll see Dr. Clint there as well. Dr. Clint, again, thank you for joining me today on the Remarkable CEO podcast. And for all of our listeners, appreciate you and look forward to joining with you on our next podcast. Remember, every week. So we'll see you next week. Until then, God bless everyone.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Remarkable CEO podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, share with a friend, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, direct message us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Now go and be remarkable.